Imagine waking up to viral videos of American shoppers supposedly stampeding through stores, frantically snatching up Chinese-made TVs as though the world's supply might run out any second. In the background, the world's two biggest economies have just agreed to a fragile truce, pausing their bruising trade war for 90 days. But what if the biggest threat to that truce isn't tariffs, politicians, or even real-world economics, but an avalanche of misinformation flooding social media in both countries? Today, we're diving deep into a story where reality and digital fiction collide, and where carefully curated narratives could tip global markets and upend international relations overnight. Could a battle of bots and media manipulation undo painstaking negotiation? And what does it mean for how money and technology drive geopolitics in 2025? Buckle up, because this is not just a trade war, it's an information war, and the stakes have never been higher. It wasn't always this way. The United States and China once operated in a climate of mutual benefit, eager to build bridges of commerce and cultural exchange. Let's rewind. Back in the 1970s, diplomatic ties were being rebuilt. The world watched as China gradually opened up, and American companies saw vast opportunity. Fast forward to 2001, and China's entry into the World Trade Organization was heralded as a new era for globalization. Trade boomed. U.S. businesses tapped into China's manufacturing prowess, delighting in cheaper goods and supply chain efficiency. China, on the other hand, enjoyed surging exports, urban development, and an expanding middle class. Growth rates defied gravity, and for a time, everyone seemed to win. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. American manufacturing jobs began trickling away, sometimes in waves, as factories moved offshore. Politicians grew nervous about the loss of domestic industry and the rise of a formidable economic rival. U.S. tech firms cried foul over intellectual property theft, and concerns about security and data grew louder with every passing year. By 2018, the mood had darkened. The Trump administration, riding a wave of nationalist rhetoric, threw down the gauntlet, punitive tariffs on Chinese imports, with Beijing retaliating in kind. The trade war was on, sending tremors through financial markets worldwide. Suddenly, what had been the engine of globalization looked like a flashpoint for a new era of confrontation. The world held its breath for years as the two giants engaged in tit-for-tat escalation, tariffs on everything from electronics and soybeans to steel and luxury goods. There was a glimmer of hope in the so-called Phase 1 agreement of 2020, but the underlying issues, technology transfer, market access, national security, remained unsolved. The engagement era was over. As one former CIA China analyst, Christopher Johnson, put it, "The old playbook is gone. We are in fundamentally new territory." Which brings us to the present. In May 2025, after marathon talks in Geneva, the U.S. and China announced a 90-day suspension of some of the harshest tariffs. The U.S., which had previously jacked up tariffs on certain Chinese goods to a staggering 145%, agreed to scale them back to 30%. China reciprocated, dropping its own tariffs on American products from 125% to 10%. Investors and manufacturers everywhere sighed with relief. Maybe this was the beginning of the end for the trade war. But while diplomats shook hands, another, less visible battle was raging on digital front lines. Across Chinese social media platforms like Douyin and Weibo, a flood of alarming stories began to surface. Videos racked up millions of views, purporting to show Americans panicking in the wake of tariffs, rushing into supermarkets to stockpile Chinese-branded products, even flying to China to buy consumer goods directly. Headlines on state media declared, "Americans are starting to stock up like crazy amid tariffs and snapping up Chinese-branded TVs." But there was just one problem. Many of these viral videos and claims weren't real. One especially popular clip, supposedly showing American consumers in a desperate scramble, was actually recycled footage from the 2018 Black Friday shopping season, years before the current trade crisis. Still, the posts spread like wildfire, amplified by state media outlets and content creators, shaping perceptions on a massive scale. On the American side, the narrative was just as chaotic. U.S. officials decried China's continued restrictions on critical minerals, despite the Geneva Agreement. In a move that made headlines, the U.S. imposed new export controls on semiconductor design software, striking at the heart of China's tech ambitions. Meanwhile, China responded by introducing export controls on rare earth elements, triggering deep concern among American manufacturers, especially those in tech, automotive, and aerospace sectors, all of which need these minerals to function. And all the while, Armies of social media bots and influencers fanned the flames, with disinformation campaigns targeting global brands, Chanel, Gucci, Amazon, accusing them of hiding Chinese manufacturing labels, fueling resentment and fueling a shift in consumer sentiment. Dan Brahmi, CEO of Cyabra, a digital security firm, described the scale in stark terms. This was a digital blitz. A third of the accounts weren't real, but the backlash they triggered was. As if the economic chess match wasn't complex enough, now both sides were fighting to control the narrative, using every tool at their disposal, real and digital, official and unofficial. These narratives are almost certainly curated by the state, said Andrew Murtha, director at Johns Hopkins China Global Research Center. They help align Chinese public opinion with governmental strategy, in this case demonstrating, albeit inaccurately, that the U.S. is already feeling the pain, so China must stay the course. The ramifications of this narrative warfare are staggering. Perception, after all, can become reality, especially when public sentiment begins to influence political decision-making. In Chicago, content creator Vivian Wei found herself fielding panicked questions from friends and family in China. Some people even suggested not to come to the United States for tourism or study, she reported, recounting rumors of empty shelves and widespread chaos. But when she visited local supermarkets, she found everything normal, proof that, on the ground, the truth diverged sharply from the viral narrative. Still, the excitement and outrage online were real. In an age when a single video can spark international outrage, misinformation has become a strategic weapon, and nothing less than the very future of world trade may hang in the balance. At this point, the core issue emerges. Can diplomacy survive the storm of digital manipulation? Could fake news, bots, and state-curated narratives push governments back to confrontation, destroying years of painful negotiation in weeks or even days? According to Orville Schell of the Asia Society, retaliatory cycles are extraordinarily hard to halt. Once the tit-for-tat begins, it takes on a momentum of its own, impacting the global economy in ways we can't always predict. All this is further complicated by hardening policy positions. In Washington, the White House accuses Beijing of gaming the system. China's failure to comply gives us every right to retaliate, declared Stephen Miller, advisor to President Trump. In Beijing, officials bristle at what they see as U.S. aggression. Liu Pengyu, spokesperson for the Chinese embassy, argues, the U.S. is abusing export control measures, harming the global trading system. Meanwhile, another tremor shakes the fragile truce, this time in technology. The U.S. Commerce Department's warnings against Huawei's latest AI chips and restrictions on American companies selling vital software to Chinese firms threaten to derail cooperation in advanced sectors. Removing such tools could cripple China's ambitions to catch up in semiconductors and AI, while China's control of 90% of the world's rare earth processing gives it a powerful lever in return. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect is how much of this struggle is playing out beyond closed diplomatic sessions, in full view and with the participation of the public itself. Both Chinese and American citizens find themselves not just spectators, but sometimes pawns or even combatants in a digital war over truth and perception. The stakes extend far beyond two countries. Multinational corporations, from luxury consumer brands to high-tech aerospace firms, are caught in the crossfire. Many are facing real damage from a deluge of social media attacks, brand jacking, and rumors. The impact could ripple through global supply chains, threatening jobs, investment, and innovation around the world. But despite the chaos, the story is far from over. As Scott Bessent, U.S. Treasury Secretary, warned, talks are a bit stalled. We may need top-level intervention to prevent a complete breakdown. And so, we arrive at a crucial question. As both sides dig in on tariffs, technology, and truth, can the U.S. and China find a way to steer through this storm of digital disinformation? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a new, unpredictable era in global economics, where facts themselves are up for grabs? Stay tuned, because as the information war intensifies, the fate of the world's most important economic relationship, and perhaps the global economy itself, hangs in the balance. As the world's two largest economies hover on the knife's edge between stability and renewed confrontation, we now turn our gaze forward. The 90-day trade truce might have paused tariffs for now, but the engines of digital disinformation are running hotter than ever. What happens next? Is there any hope for diplomacy to outpace the chaos, or are we watching a slow-motion unraveling of global order? In a landscape flooded with viral falsehoods, shoppers supposedly stampeding for Chinese TVs, luxury brands accused of secret deals, and outlandish claims about Americans hoarding Chinese goods, The risk isn't just confusion, it's escalation. These aren't just harmless memes, they're catalysts, nudging public opinion and policymakers toward hardened, even retaliatory stances. As Andrew Murtha of Johns Hopkins observed, these narratives are almost certainly curated by the state, help align Chinese public opinion with governmental strategy. Let's break down the scenarios that might materialize in the coming months. First, and most ominously, there's the possibility of the truce collapsing outright. Imagine the digital crossfire intensifies. Each wave of viral misinformation sparks tit-for-tat trade restrictions. One moment, it's rumors about American brands exploiting Chinese labor. The next, videos claim empty shelves in U.S. supermarkets. As heated rhetoric spreads, leaders on both sides face mounting domestic pressure. Nationalism flourishes, and compromise becomes a political liability. If that pressure boils over, tariffs could come roaring back, possibly exceeding even pre-truce levels. The cycle of retaliation would not just harm China and the U.S., but unleash aftershocks across the globe. Supply chains would seize, inflation would spike, and uncertainty would ripple from Tokyo to Berlin to Sao Paulo. Orville Schell of the Asia Society cautions, once retaliation becomes the norm, it's nearly impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. The entire global economy could be held hostage to echo chambers and bots. The second scenario, somewhat brighter, sees the two powers leveraging the pause to hammer out a comprehensive agreement. Here, negotiators recognize the threat posed by weaponized information. Perhaps, with behind-the-scenes diplomacy, both sides agree to jointly denounce digital manipulation, even sharing intelligence about fake news campaigns. This would be unprecedented. Imagine U.S. and Chinese officials appearing together to address their citizens about the dangers of online deception. In this world, the truce forms a foundation for broader cooperation, not just on trade, but on tech standards, supply chain security, and digital ethics. Such an outcome is ambitious, even utopian, but not impossible if leaders summon the necessary political will. A third path might be the most realistic: managed competition. Washington and Beijing accept that deep cooperation is out of reach, but also that full-scale confrontation is too costly. Instead, they pursue a strategy of compartmentalized engagement, competing fiercely in some industries, cooperating in others, and establishing crisis hotlines to prevent misunderstandings from spiraling. In this scenario, both sides quietly invest in digital literacy programs for their citizens, building some immunity against the most blatant forms of disinformation. Yet even in the best cases, the risks are daunting. As the Kayabra report revealed, a third of the accounts fueling recent anti-U.S. backlash weren't even real people, but the outrage they triggered was. There's another layer too: technology and critical resources. The U.S. tightening export controls on semiconductors and design software threatens to bring some of China's most ambitious projects, like its C919 commercial aircraft, to a halt. In turn, China's chokehold on rare earth mineral processing, a staggering 90% of global capacity, becomes a strategic lever. If rare earth exports are restricted, American manufacturers of cars, smartphones, and military equipment could face a crippling shortage. Neither side is eager for escalation, but the leverage each holds over the other means that even minor diplomatic slights could trigger significant consequences. And hanging over all of this, the fate of nearly 270,000 Chinese students in the U.S. and countless business and cultural exchanges. Tighter U.S. visa controls and the threat of mass revocations could reshape the technological and academic landscape for a generation, further deepening divides. So, how should we, ordinary viewers and global citizens, make sense of this tangle of threats and opportunities? The first and most important lesson is to cultivate skepticism, especially online. Viral videos and sensational headlines aren't always truth-tellers. As Vivian Wei, a Chinese-American content creator, discovered when she toured Chicago supermarkets for herself, the reality on the ground often looks nothing like the digital rumor mill. Chinese were getting very excited about the prospect of chaos in U.S. stores, she recalled, only to find everything calm and orderly. Her story is a testament to the power of first-hand experience in puncturing online myths. For anyone following the news, whether you're an investor, student, or just a curious global observer, digital vigilance is vital. Next time you see a video claiming that Americans are panic-buying Chinese goods, or that a U.S. luxury brand has abandoned its heritage for Chinese supply chains, take a moment to check the source. Does the footage have a file watermark? Is it being promoted by accounts with no history or odd usernames? Chances are, there's more to the story. For business leaders, the lesson is even sharper. Brand reputation is now at the mercy of social media storms, both authentic and artificial. Firms operating in this environment must invest in real-time monitoring, crisis communication, and digital forensics. It's not enough to simply issue press releases. Rapid, transparent responses and engagement with key audiences can help blunt the impact of coordinated misinformation. As Dan Brahmi from Cyabra explained, fake profiles hijacked luxury brands, pushed anti-US narratives, and steered buyers away without raising suspicion. That's what makes it effective. Governments, too, need to adapt rapidly. Public diplomacy can't be limited to televised speeches or press briefings. Instead, officials must enter the digital trenches, countering false narratives where they originate, and forging transnational partnerships to identify and neutralize campaigns before they spiral out of control. While the U.S. Commerce Department and Chinese authorities have traded accusations about export controls and broken promises, both sides share a vested interest in preventing information chaos from torpedoing years of negotiation. What about the average citizen? Arm yourself with curiosity. Seek out news from multiple sources, both local and international. Support independent journalism, now more vital than ever in a world awash with manipulated content. Share responsibly, and push back against rumors in your own community. In an age where echo chambers are easily weaponized, every digitally literate individual is a potential line of defense against misinformation. There's also a broader, more hopeful lesson. The intensity of the U.S.-China information conflict underscores the reality that even nations locked in strategic rivalry are deeply intertwined. The fate of a rare earth shipment in Inner Mongolia or a chip factory in Arizona can reverberate through global markets and kitchens alike. This interdependence is a potential source of strength as much as risk. If governments, businesses, and individuals choose to recognize it, there's scope, not just for managed competition, but for creative, pragmatic cooperation. So, let's circle back to our original question. Can diplomacy, and this fragile trade truce, survive the onslaught of fake news and digital manipulation, or are we doomed to see conflict spiral out of control once more? The answer isn't as simple as a yes or no. The danger is real, as are the temptations for both sides to weaponize narratives for advantage. But the truce's survival isn't just about the decisions of Trump, Xi, or their top negotiators. It depends on everyone, businesses, journalists, students, citizens, recognizing the stakes and resisting the allure of easy outrage. It depends on remembering that beneath the headlines and hashtags, the world's most important relationship is still built on real people, real goods, and real hopes for the future. Here's a secret fact that rarely makes the news. Some of the most effective anti-disinformation efforts in recent years have come not from governments or big tech firms, but from teams of university students, Chinese, American, and others, working together on joint digital literacy projects. Despite geopolitical rivalry, these grassroots collaborations have exposed troll farms, mapped bot networks, and educated their peers on how to spot fake news. They prove that trust can still be built, even when official channels are frozen. In the end, the future of the U.S.-China relationship will be written not just by the power of tariffs or the cunning of negotiators, but by the daily digital choices of millions of people, maybe including you. So, next time you scroll past a sensational story or viral video about the trade war, pause. Ask yourself, who benefits from me believing this? Can I verify it elsewhere? And how can I be part of the solution, not the storm? If you found this deep dive eye-opening, hit the like button and share it with others hungry for clarity amid the noise. Subscribe for more untangling of global challenges, and drop your thoughts or questions in the comments below. What's your own experience with trade rumors or digital misinformation?